I'm the head of the R&D at the moment at 𝗕𝗘𝗫. I've been designing here for the last 13 or 14 years. How did I get into electronics? I am a guitar player and I wanted a guitar amp, and my father was kind enough to buy me a Vox AC30, which was a pretty mega amp in the day. And at some point it went wrong, and he said, well, why don't you fix it? And I thought, oh, well, I suppose I could try to fix it. I didn't know nothing about it. He said, well, why don't you take the back off and have a look and try and work out what's inside it? So he basically encouraged me to work out all the values and work out all the interconnections, and I basically drew a circuit diagram of an AC30. Still didn't really know how to fix it, to be honest, and I think at the end somebody else sorted it out for us, but it was a good learning process, and I realised that it wasn't exactly rocket science in there, and you can work out how things work. And it wasn't long before I became fairly expert at mending valve amplifiers. I shouldn't say this, because if I say I can mend valve amplifiers, all my friends dump me with loads of broken valve amplifiers, but I am known as the doctor. They call me the doctor because I fix things, and it's normally valve amps. So people just come round to my house, oh, do you mind, could you just have a quick look at this? Or I've got some friends that are touring, and before they go on tour, they say, can you just have a look over my amp, make sure it's going to be all right for the tour, that sort of thing. Which I don't mind doing if it's not too many, but if too many people know, I just get bombarded with, and have a front room full of amplifiers, which is, well, it's full of amplifiers anyway, they're mine, I've got loads of my own. I tend to play electric guitar. Electric guitar is only half about the physical instrument you play, the other half is the way the amplifier amplifies it, because it's a very non-linear process. There's all sorts of harmonic distortions going on, the speakers flapping around all over the place, adding all sorts of things that it shouldn't do. But as it turns out, people have pretty much through trial and error gone, oh, well, I like this and I like that. And so over the years, guitar amps have got a certain sound that people like, and, well, some people may know why, but a lot of people don't. They just, you know, it's been luck or natural selection has meant that certain processes have worked and this type of paper has worked with a speaker. It's all physics, really. It's all about what you're hearing, isn't it, what you're listening to. It's not necessarily whether it's made of the right paper or the right density or whatever. You can measure those things, but you also need to listen to them as well and work out what's right. Some people say, well, you know, you should have no distortion and you should have no noise and no nothing. And it's like, well, that's not always the case. Certainly with guitar amplifiers, there's a lot of sort of strangeness happens where some amplifiers have got quite a lot of hiss at the high frequencies when they're just, you know, nothing's happening. And everyone thinks those amps are louder than the ones that don't hiss, and they're not any louder. The volume when you play through them is exactly the same, but there's something that tells you, it scares you almost, you think, that's gonna be loud. Well, I started off loading stuff into back of vans and helping somebody run a PA. Didn't know much about it, but I was trying to get into music in any way I could. I was playing, you know, in bands and stuff like that, and I noticed some of his equipment had got made in 𝗕𝗘𝗛𝗫 written on the back, which was a bit of a surprise. So I figured out the name of the company and knocked on their door, and then knocked on their door again, and did persistently for about a week until eventually they let me in and said, okay, we'll give you a job. So started off wiring up DN27s for Terry Clark and his company, and sort of grew my way up through the ranks in that company. As the company grew, I grew with it and became the test manager, eventually became the head of R&D. And the company acquired some other businesses. DDA was one of them, which is a mixing desk company, and also a company called Midas. Various decisions were made at some point in time, and I ended up spearheading the Midas development and became the product manager and R&D manager for the whole of that development, from XL4 through the Heritage series onto the digital consoles that were out about, I guess that was 20 years ago now. Seems like a long time ago. I can't remember whether I phoned Terry or somehow got a message through to Terry and said I'd be interested in working for you, and I think at the time 𝗕𝗘𝗫 were looking for somebody to join. So they did a kind of interview in the typical 𝗕𝗘𝗫 style, which was very casual. Mostly involved them just telling us what we were doing, or what they were doing at the time. And they gave me the job. It took a while, I think. It took them about 6 months to make their mind up, but they did eventually give me a job. And I started to spearhead the recruitment process for engineers here, and to build the team, and to start building new XDA products and also to learn all about amplifiers, because although I was fairly expert at electronics and small signal for XDA, I had no idea how to build 1,000 watt, 2,000 watt, 5,000 watt power amplifiers, so that was a bit of a steep learning curve. But that is mostly what I do now. The whole point of the 𝗕𝗘𝗛𝗫 design was to try and minimise the control circuit and have as little as possible so we could scale it down and have a smaller amp without having to pay for all the control circuitry to run it. It's one active component and two drivers, and well, so I finished, that's it. You know, it's so simple. A lot of competing designs have a similar ethos, but then they try and make them super efficient, and we didn't do that. I just left it as simple as I could, so it's not particularly efficient. It does run a bit hot, but we just take the heat out. That's easy enough to do. But the resulting performance is very, very good. It's very linear, sounds very natural. There's no crossover distortion like you get with Class AB amplifiers. It just sounds sweet. It's got a good transient performance. Again, many Class D amplifiers have quite a lot of overshoot and a lot of filtering. There's extremely little filtering in that design. There is a little, there has to be some, but it's way out, very high frequency. And so it sounds good. It's just simplicity, really. I did have a chance to go to one of the Hi-Fi shows and did listen to our equipment, and I was frankly staggered at how good it sounded. I was a bit taken aback because we tend to listen to it in not particularly good conditions, with people coming in with drinks of coffee and walking about and what have you, whereas at the trade show it had all been set up perfectly. I was pretty gobsmacked. Mostly I can hear it on live recordings. If it's something's been done in the studio, it's all been layered and processed and you can't really tell, but there were some live recordings, and if I shut my eyes I could see the piano and I could see the saxophone player, and I knew where they were. In fact, the most remarkable thing was that on that particular recording I'm talking about, I knew where the room was. We're in a room this sort of size, but when I shut my eyes, the room grew, and I could hear where the walls were. I could hear where the stage was and where the sound was bouncing around the room, and I actually moved to the other room. It's quite quite emotional to realise that all that detail could be encapsulated in a single recording, and the amplifier definitely, you know, reproduced that. I'm used to dealing with low noise signals because I used to design microphone preamplifiers for mixing consoles. They're typically designed to work with 150 ohm, 200 ohm sources. The phonograph can work down to 2 ohms, and so it has to be something like 25 dBs quieter, which I was thinking would be impossible, but we managed to do it. It is possible if you know what you're doing and you're careful with this. So I'm quite pleased with that, proud of that. Everybody makes headphone amps, and they all make them to a budget these days. Everyone's trying to do them, you know, cheaply, or trying to make them run off 3-volt rails or 5-volt rails or what have you. And I knew we had 15-volt rails, or we've got twin 15-volt rails, so we had plenty of voltage, so I wanted to put a nice headphone amplifier in there. And I looked at all the off-the-shelf chips and couldn't find anything that I thought really was going to work very well. So just sort of went back to first principles and thought, okay, well, here we go, we're going to design our own then. Designed most of it on a simulator. What I didn't want to have was lots of crossover distortion, which is what you get in a Class AB amplifier. And same thing would apply to a Class AB headphone amplifier. So I spent ages working on how to minimise the crossover distortion, and then built a real one, and yeah, lo and behold, it worked. I was very happy with it. And we're working on bigger amplifiers. I'm sure people will get to see that at some point in the future. Very much bigger amplifiers. I'm sure there'll be more parts of the Hi-Fi system that we can add. We might do another phono preamp, something that's even better than the one we've currently got. I think it might be possible to do that, or to have multi-channels or something like that. There's loads of ideas.